Hello and welcome. I'm Suma Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the headlines of this hour. Israeli Army spokesman Efi Defrin has stated that the IDF has carried out approximately 3,400 strikes across Iran and disabled more than 150 Iranian defense systems. US President Donald Trump has addressed the United Kingdom and Prime Minister Keir Starmer directly on social media, saying that they don't need people to join after the war has already been won. US President Donald Trump has blamed Iran for the school bombing that claimed 175 lives on the first day of active hostilities between Iran and US. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi has slammed the US-Israel strikes on Iran, saying that the war in the Middle East should have never happened in the first place. US President Trump was there to witness the return of the bodies of 6 American soldiers killed in the Iran campaign. The soldiers were killed after a drone struck a US military base in Kuwait. At least a dozen leaders from Central America, South America, and the Caribbean joined the Shield of the Americas summit, where US President Donald Trump signed a proclamation launching the coalition. Now we start this hour with US President Donald Trump has denied that the United States targeted a girls' elementary school in southern Iran. President Trump has stated that based on available information, the attack, which reportedly killed 175 people, was carried out by Iran itself. Meanwhile, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has confirmed investigations are ongoing, but accused that Iran is the only party targeting civilians. President Trump has criticized Iran's munitions as highly inaccurate, reinforcing that the civilian casualties were the result of Iranian actions, not U.S. operations. Let's listen in.
Did the United States bomb a girls' elementary school in southern Iran on the first day of the war and kill 175 people?
In my opinion, based on what I've seen, that was done by Iran.
Is that true, Mr. Hegseth? It was Iran who did that?
We're certainly investigating.
Still investigating?
But the only side that targets civilians is Iran.
We think it was done by Iran. Because they're very inaccurate, as you know, with their munitions. They have no accuracy whatsoever. It was done by Iran.
China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi has said that the Middle East war should have never happened. Speaking at a press conference in Beijing, Wang has emphasized that a show of force does not equate to having strong reason, has warned against returning to the law of the jungle, stating that the conflict benefits no party involved. Wang's remarks underline China's call for restraint and diplomatic solutions amid escalating tensions in the region. Let's listen in.
面对陷入战火的中东，我想说的是，这是一场本不应该发生的战争，也是一场对各方都没有好处的战争。
Now we welcome Mr. Andrew K. Long. He's a China strategist, joins us live from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, Mr. Long, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at Mr. Wang, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang's comments, do you think that China can be a mediator, or any country can realistically mediate between Israel, US, and Iran?
Well, I watched his press conference on the television just now, and it is quite clear that China would not directly be involved in this because China doesn't believe in using force to solve problems. And also, China opposes the imposition of the law of the jungle, where the strong can do what it likes and the weak must bear what they must. Now, I think that if this kind of rule of law of the jungle is to prevail, the whole world will be in chaos. and there will be conflicts, there will be collateral damage, as what we're seeing now over the Middle East, and not only the Middle East, but because of the impact on oil prices, commodity prices, is affecting the livelihood and the stability of all countries all around. So I think that Mr. Wong was trying to say that force alone doesn't solve any problems. And of course, yeah, he could hark back at what happened during the Second World War, or even the First World War, and the whole world pay a heavy price in terms of devastations and setting back many countries' developments. So I think that this is the reason why China still welcomes the forthcoming visit by President Trump because it doesn't believe that isolation and stop talking to each other, resorting to a test of will, a test of the muscle, a test of war will solve problems. So if there are problems, I think it is the Chinese intention or suggestion is that people could just sit around the table and then put all the cards on the table and try to resolve differences. And rather than imposing one country's will on another and expect other countries to surrender entirely their sovereignty, their country's development. I think that that's the message he's trying to send across the world.
And how do you think, what will President Trump use to justify this Operation Epic Fury moving forward?
Well, I think the President Trump, when he ascended into the White House the second time, and even right from the beginning, he was thinking that American, of course, remains the largest economy in the world. It's the strongest military power across the globe, and he can use that as a leverage to bend all countries to his will. Firstly, consolidating his foundation in the Western Hemisphere. Hence, he wants Greenland, he wants Canada as well, and is now controlling the oil resources and the government in Venezuela, and the next target is Cuba. But it doesn't mean that the United States would confine itself to the Western Hemisphere. It still wants to exert its dominance, its hegemony in other parts of the world. For example, in the Asia Pacific, through offshore balancing, rallying its allies with Japan, and to a certain extent South Korea, but also Australia, and to a certain extent India, to contain China. And then, of course, in Ukraine, trying to end the war, and trying to accede even to Russia's some of the demands, or at least addressing the Russian side of the story, contrary to the kind of rhetoric amongst its Western allies. And on the Middle East, he wants to exert Americans' influence throughout, capitalizing on Israel's military dominance and Americans' economic hegemony. And then, of course, Iran has always been a thorn on the side of the United States. And then he thinks that using Americans' hegemonic power, he could bring Iran to heel. He could destroy the Khamenei regime. He could bring all the Iranian people to his knees. But I think the realities give a lie to that. In spite of the huge bombing of Iran, you can see that Iranian government is able to retaliate in a coordinated, well-coordinated fashion, suggesting that the replacement government is still functioning. And then, of course, Iran is no walkover. It's not Venezuela. It's a country in terms of size, 4.6 times the size of Germany. In terms of population, it's nearly 100 million. It's something like 18 million people. And then to think that even that he can mobilize the Kurds to invade Iran on the ground, and he's walking back on that because how many Kurdish insurgents are there? You could even do 10,000 or even 100,000. It's not going to make a difference. But then he's still trying to double down on this rhetoric, hoping the war in Iran could last for 9 months. Why 9 months? That's the absolute maximum before the midterm elections, because
Yes.
a lot of the American people, the majority of the American people, do not support the war. And then if the war is carried on without any deliverables, and in fact a lot of the American public is also suffering because of high oil prices
Yes.
at the gas station, this is going to destroy all his expectations in the midterm elections.
Yes,
So I think that he's now trying to double down, but the realities on the ground seem to suggest
Yes.
that his hope for victory is at best a pipe dream.
Thank you, Mr. Long, for sharing that. Please do stay with us as we come back to you for another discussion. Now we have a breaking news coming in from Oslo. An explosion has struck the United States Embassy in Oslo, causing minor damage but no injuries. The blast has reported around 1 a.m. local time, targeted the consular section of the embassy, prompting a large emergency response including police helicopters, bomb squads, and a security perimeter. Authorities have described the incident as a likely deliberate act and have begun investigations, speaking with witnesses and searching the area. The blast comes amid heightened U.S.-Iran tensions. However, Norwegian officials said it is too early to link the incident to the ongoing Middle East conflict. Now for this, we welcome Mr. Matthew Adam. He is joining us as an American journalist and author from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Mr. Adam, for joining us. What more do we know so far about this accident in Oslo?
Well, it wasn't an accident. It was, an explosion.
Sorry, yes, explosion.
Right. So I wouldn't characterize it as an accident. The only issue is
Yes.
whether it was just some random person deciding they wanted to blow up U.S. government property, or if it was a terrorist act. And, this is the sort of, there is no evidence that I'm aware of at this early stage in the investigation pointing to terrorism, but it stands to reason that it could be terrorism. And this is the sort of thing that the Iranians do, is they lash out at targets off the battlefield and attack their enemies where they find it convenient. So it would, there's no proof yet that this is an Iranian attack at the U.S. Embassy in Oslo, but it could very well turn out to be. It could also just be somebody else who's sympathetic to the Iranian cause. Scandinavia does have a lot of Muslim residents, and I know they're not all supportive of the U.S. attack on Iran. So, it could come from anywhere, but I don't think one can rule out terrorism just yet.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Vadam, for sharing that insight. Please do stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving the focus on to Middle East, Israel has carried out approximately 3,400 strikes across Iran in the past week, disabling more than 150 Iranian defense systems. The Israeli army has said around 7,500 munitions have been dropped by the Israeli Air Force on targets throughout the country as part of the operations alongside the United States. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel has achieved near total controls of the skies over Tehran and will continue the campaign with full force. He has added that a well-organized plan is in place to destabilize the Iranian regime and ensure the protection of Israeli citizens and communities. Let's listen into what Israeli Prime Minister has shared.
אתם אומרים לי, לממשלה, לחיילים ולמפקדים הגיבורים שלנו, תמשיכו עד הסוף, עד הניצחון. אני מבקש להודות לכם מעומק ליבי על הגיבוי, ואני מודיע לכם, אנחנו ממשיכים בכל הכוח. במלחמה מנצחים עם יוזמה ועם תחבולה. אבל היסוד הראשון של ההצלחה הוא הנחישות. באמצעות הטייסים הנועזים שלנו ושל ארצות הברית, השגנו שליטה כמעט מוחלטת בשמי טהרן. אנחנו בכל אופן, אנחנו נעשה את כל הדרוש כדי להגן על יישובינו ועל אזרחינו. וביחס למה שנעשה בהמשך באיראן, יש לנו תוכנית סדורה עם הרבה הפתעות. לערער את המשטר, לאפשר שינוי.
Meanwhile, the Israeli Defense Forces have said that the operation is targeting the Iranian regime's capabilities and infrastructure, with further strikes expected as required. However, Netanyahu has stressed that success in the conflict relies on determination, initiative, and strategic action by the military. Israel and the US are maintaining close coordination to maximize impact and sustain pressure on Tehran's military capabilities. Let's listen into what Israeli Army spokesperson has shared.
אנחנו מסכמים היום שבוע של לחימה. שבוע מאז שיצאנו למבצע שאגת הארי. צה"ל פוגע באופן עוצמתי, יחד עם צבא ארצות הברית, בכל יכולות ומערכי המשטר האיראני. במסגרת המבצע, ביצענו כ-3,400 תקיפות ברחבי איראן, והוצאנו משימוש יותר מ-150 מערכות הגנה איראניות. עד כה, חיל האוויר הטיל כ-7,500 חימושים על מטרות בכל רחבי.
Now we welcome back Mr. Matthew Adam. He's an American journalist and author, joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Mr. Adam, for staying with us.
Sure.
Now, you know, we've heard so many things in media, also social media. How do you analyze the coordination between US and Israel? Some of our guests say that they're 100% coordinated, while some other guests have been skeptical about their alignment.
I think it's pretty clear that the U.S. and Israel are coordinating their activities with great precision. They have acted in concert, and they are on the same page. They want to achieve the same goals. I think that Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech may have been aimed at some of the critics of the war, who've said that there is no clear war goal, and he said regime change is the goal. This is something that President Trump has also said. President Trump has encouraged the people of Iran to rise up against the theocratic government there and seize power. So I think that Israel and the U.S. are working together very closely, and I don't understand where this criticism that they're not coordinating closely is coming from.
Right. And how do you analyze Iran's capacity now that some of missiles of Iran has, of course, landed elsewhere or in questionable targets, but of course some of them did penetrate through the Iron Dome in Israel?
Right. Okay. Yeah. Iran is not a helpless giant in this. It still has capabilities, although they have been degraded significantly by the United States and Israel. The government was decapitated, and now it is seems to be growing a new head with a new supreme leader on the way. The Navy has been essentially scuttled by the U.S., particularly by the U.S., but I think Israel also played a role. And the missile capability has also been harmed, has also been reduced or mitigated by U.S. and Israeli forces, but they still have a lot of missiles. They can still do a lot of damage. They still have control of the government within Iran. They still have the various militias and the Quds Force and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. So they're still pretty firmly in control of the physical territory of Iran, and it's not clear to me how Israel and the U.S. are going to change that without putting boots on the ground. President Trump has said he doesn't want to put U.S. soldiers or U.S. military personnel into Iran, because American presidents are traditionally quite fearful of blowback and of casualties, hurting, providing adverse public relations for the United States. They don't like seeing body bags come back to the United States. So they're quite reluctant to do that. They prefer to do, a high-tech war. Some could call it a video game war, where they're just pushing buttons on a screen and sending drones and missiles and attacking things. So it's not clear how they're going to dislodge the actual troops and the police state apparatus that controls Iran, but I'm sure, and I'm not privy to any plans they may have, but I'm sure they are thinking about it as we speak.
Yes, with that, I would like to thank Mr. Matthew Vadam for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to China. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi has said that relations between Beijing and Moscow remain steadfast and unshakable despite global tensions. He has condemned the ongoing war in West Asia, describing it as unnecessary, and called on the United States to manage its differences with China. Wang has warned that a strong fist does not mean strong reason and stressed that the world cannot return to the law of jungle. Meanwhile, he has highlighted that this year is critical for Sino-US relations, urging careful preparation, communication, and elimination of unnecessary interference. Furthermore, Wang has reiterated that China will uphold its red lines while seeking dialogue with the United States, even as Western critics question Beijing's ties with Moscow. However, he has insisted that amidst a turbulent international environment, the partnership with Russia remains firm and continues to be prioritized. Let's listen into what the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has shared.
变乱交织的国际形势，中俄关系始终风雨不动，安如山。
Now we welcome back Mr. Andrew K.P. Long. He's a China strategist, joins us live from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, Mr. Long, for staying with us. Now, before I get into Russia-China relations, I wanted to ask, is there any anticipation that's building for the upcoming meeting for President Xi and President Trump? What do you think will be high on their agenda this time?
Well, I think that Beijing wants a more stable relationship, even though continuing confrontational relationship between the Americans is the greatest superpower and a rising superpower like China. And of course, Americans' dominance still remains the greatest in the world, and it will cause a lot of disruptions, especially around China's neighbors. So China wants a peaceful environment to continue with its trajectory to become a moderately well-off, advanced socialist country by mid-century, and hence the latest 15 five-year plan is a halfway house. The least that China wants to happen is a disruptive force around the world, especially its adversary, the United States, putting spanners in the works. So obviously, China wants to broker a more stable relationship, buy more soybeans, because that is the main constituent supporter of the Trump administration, especially with the upcoming midterm elections in November. And of course, possibility of even buying oil from Venezuela, maybe at a more advantageous price. But of course, opening up the China's economy further, because that ties in with what the country is trying to do to rebalance its economy away from total exports, from too much reliance on exports into internal consumption. So, and also growing its country's technological and innovation self-reliance. And so to that, on that front, more foreign investments could broaden the economic base. For example, a lot of consumer products from the West, from the United States, including foods, restaurants, even music and culture, and particularly people-to-people exchanges, which would help to help people on both sides to understand each other. But also in terms of international relations, trying to broker a kind of a greater degree of mutual trust that China would not directly oppose the United States' core interests, nor should the United States be allowed to trample upon China's core interests, especially, for example, on sensitive issues like the Taiwan. Not that Beijing is going to invade Taiwan, but Beijing would oppose any kind of movement urging, supporting Taiwan's veering towards independence. So I think that a lot of these red lines will be talked about in the forthcoming visit.
Yes. And what about Russia and China's coordination? Do you think that President Trump would say something about this, or do you think he would even ask about their stance on Iran right now?
Yes, I think that both the Ukraine issue and the Iran issue are likely to be raised, considering President Trump is not about to run over Iran before the meeting, because he's already talking about prolonging the pressure on Iran for 9 months, knowing full well that Iran has shown its capabilities to retaliate and is spreading the retaliation across the region, rattling markets not only in the United States but throughout the region, throughout the world, including increase in energy prices and commodity prices, thereby putting a lot of pressure back to the United States. So I think that President Trump is like to raise this, hoping that China could put his hand in to suppress Iran, which is not going to happen. Of course, Iran, of course, is a good ally with China. But also on Ukraine, China has been walking a very tight red line in the sense that China doesn't want to be seen to be supporting the war on Iran, Russia's invasion of Iran, of Ukraine. After all, Ukraine is an independent country, and invading another a sovereign country flies in the face of the UN's charter, which China's always uphold, considering its reliance on territorial integrity, for example, over Taiwan and in other areas. So, but China is walking a tightrope in the sense also that China has been a close ally with Russia. The two economies are intertwined. China is the world's largest importer of energy and agricultural products, and Russia is the world's biggest, one of the world's biggest energy exporter and agricultural products. So the two economies have been intertwined for a long, long time before the war, and that, of course, China wants to carry on, undeterred by other countries' pressure to change that, to not buying Russian oil, not buying agricultural products as a means to pressure Russia over Ukraine, and that China doesn't want to do. But China is very consistent in the sense that all this economic relationship, have been going on for a long, long time before the Ukraine war, and there is no reason why China should be forced to change that. As unlike Indian situation, the Indian only started to buy Russian oil massively after the Ukraine war, but China has been always consistent, buying more or less the same level of oil input, perhaps at a largely discounted price. But it doesn't mean that China is supporting the war. But on the other hand, that seemed to be the case by United States and its Western allies. So China is walking a very tight rope. So I think that this is another issue to be raised with China, but I don't think that China will change from its consistent stance on these issues when it touch upon its sovereignty, its rights to develop its own economy, and its unwillingness to be dragged into unwanted wars.
Yes, and talking about consistency, right, Mr. Long, China has always been consistent on their stance about Israel, on their stance about Gaza, and which is very, very different from US's stance, which is also consistent on US's part. What do you think, how do you think that would come up in the upcoming discussions between these presidents?
Well, I think that the President Trump is going to press President Xi on the Middle East situation, including Iran, but also over Gaza. And of course, China has expressed its unwillingness to join this port of peace, so-called port of peace, which is Trump's formula to concentrate power and the final decision on himself. But China wants a peaceful Middle East because it sits right at the center point of China's Belt and Road Initiative. And China's Belt and Road Initiative is very important both in terms of improving China's connectivity to the rest of the world in supply chain, but also in terms of national security, because the Belt and Road Initiative provides pipelines over land rather than total reliance on shipment for this oil and other resources through the Strait of Hormuz. Now is being almost shut down by the war in Iran, and of course passing through other choke points in the Malacca Strait. So I think the Belt and Road Initiative is China's answer to avoiding this choke points in sea routes. But the unstable Middle East and what's happening in over Gaza and Iran could impact upon the stability of China's Belt and Road Initiative. But meanwhile, the Belt and Road Initiative provides another route for the export of oil from the Middle East to China without passing through the Strait of Hormuz.
Thank you very much, Mr. Long, for sharing that insight with us. Please stay with us as we have another breaking news coming in from Israel. Now, breaking news, the Israeli Defense Forces have said that missiles have been launched from Iran towards the territory of Israel. In a message posted on the social media platform X, the IDF has said the defense systems are currently operating to intercept the threat. Authorities also said the Israel Home Front Command has sent preliminary alerts directly to mobile phones in relevant areas. The public has been urged to immediately enter protected spaces when sirens or alerts are received and remain there until further notice. Officials say people should only leave shelters after an explicit directive from authorities as missile defense operations continue. The latest alert comes amid escalating military exchanges between Iran and Israel. Now we welcome back Mr. Andrew K.P. Long. He is a China strategist, joins us live from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, Mr. Long, for staying with us. Now, building on our earlier discussion and also breaking news now, how do you analyze Israel and US's coordination right now? Do you think that China is watching this closely, and what's China's take?
Well, of course, China is watching the turmoil around the world very closely because they're all involved, and the world's major powers could impact on China's national security. But as far as Israel is concerned, of course, there is no doubt that Israel is the most powerful military in the Middle East. And along with the United States, the hope is that these joint forces would bring Iran to heel and over Gaza as well, creating a Middle East tilting towards American interests. But Iran's retaliation, firstly using ordinary missiles, that is, of course, the Israel's defense systems is very powerful, as we're very advanced, so it stops most of the missiles, if not all. But now Iran is using hypersonic missiles. Hypersonic missiles are missiles which travel multiple times the speed of sound. and some are traveling Mach 6 or 7, and these are very, very difficult to intercept, if at all. Particularly, some of these missiles can change course towards the final journey towards the target. So you can find that one of the latest hypersonic missiles managed to strike Israel's key installations, and including even the office of Prime Minister Netanyahu. I mean, of course, are supposed to be the highest defended installations, as well as Israel's key intelligence and military assets. So I think that this is a warning by Iran to Israel and to the United States that it does have certain cards up its sleeve. But it doesn't mean that Iran is strong. Of course, it's been largely weakened and degraded. But it shows that both American and Israel that the capitulation of Iran is not to be taken for granted, because a lot of the Iranian people are rallying towards the government, even though quite a significant number do not agree or do not support the previous Khomeini government. But then, because of this trampling upon the sovereignty, trampling upon the national pride, after all, it's a country with almost 6,000 years of civilization. So I think the people are rallying behind the government, and it's a large country with 90 million, even 100 million people, and a size of 4.6 times Germany. So I think that there is still a lot of resolve against this American invasion and against the Israel projecting its military power, and this hypersonic missiles send a very strong warning signal. Even if the Israeli government is able to improve its warning system for its citizens, but it doesn't mean that it necessarily translates into credible defense, a kind of doom, a kind of shield against these hypersonic weapons.
Yes. With that, I'd like to thank Mr. Andrew K.P. Long for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our tech news. Caitlin Kalinowski, the head of robotics at OpenAI, has resigned following growing controversy over the company's deal with the U.S. Pentagon. The exit comes as scrutiny intensifies over how advanced artificial intelligence technology may be used in military operations. Reports suggest the agreement involves cooperation on AI systems that could support defense and security applications. The resignation has raised questions inside the technology community about the ethics of AI development and its use in warfare. Meanwhile, analysts say the move highlights the increasingly close relationship between Silicon Valley and defense establishments. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.